What up, y'all? Once again, this is Macaulay Sexton of Sexton Sobriety, and today I'm going to share my experience with benzodiazepines. If you're unfamiliar, benzodiazepines are medications used to treat general anxiety and panic attacks. So let's get right into it. So I was prescribed Klonopin. I was having panic attacks, I was having bouts of social anxiety, general anxiety, and really I was just ruled by anxiety. So I want to touch on anxiety as a whole right now and really just share my experience back then and my experience now. So I think anxiety is almost inevitable. The thing is that when you obsess over it and you focus on it, it tends to make it worse. And so a lot of people are actually inadvertently perpetuating their anxiety by putting their focus on it. And don't get this twisted. I'm not saying you shouldn't acknowledge this. I'm just saying to focus on it and to obsess with it is not helpful. So basically I did this. I want to touch on social anxiety, specifically social anxiety. So when I would go out into public, I would project onto everyone that they were looking at me and that they were focusing on me and looking at me sideways and all this stuff. When in reality, that's kind of a weird self-importance. Like, not everyone is looking at you. And so I had to really look at that and address that. So that's just social anxiety. When it comes to generalized anxiety, I found that it had to do with either me not accepting the past or future tripping. And that would take me away from the present moment. So I was never really in the moment. So when I tried benzodiazepines for the first time, I realized, oh, wait a minute. Maybe this is how I'm supposed to deal with reality. What it did is it minimized my emotions and it helped me to forget my past traumas, my behavioral issues, or things that weren't favorable in my life currently. And so I was like, oh, yeah, this must be how normal people operate. Unfortunately for me, this was very unhealthy because not only was I taking the benzos, but I was also taking opiates, and that's a very deadly combination, but I'm just going to focus on benzos today. So basically what benzos did for me is put me into a perpetual loop of anxiety. So I would go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and my anxiety would be there. I would take the medication and I would forget maybe something unfavorable that happened. The thing is that when I woke up the next day, that thing was still there and it would actually be nagging at me and it would pop back up. So then I would take the medication again. So it created this loop. So to someone who's experienced immense trauma, I understand and I acknowledge that this can be very enticing because you're like, oh, wait, like I don't have to think about this all the time. You know, that gut feeling, that sinking feeling that you get when you think about something traumatic or something that was a negative experience, that starts to go away. But then you'll kind of start piling up new experiences that are unfavorable or traumatic, and it can affect your impulse control. So that creates behaviors that are unfavorable. So you'll do things that are out of character. And look, I'm not saying this is for everyone that takes them. That's just my experience and a lot of other addicts that are in recovery. So basically this persisted for years and I was in this anxiety loop. And it sucked. And I thought this is the only solution. I will say that when you're taking medications for a specific reason, it's very helpful to be going to counseling, therapy, psychotherapy in conjunction with the medication instead of just relying on the medication. We get into this weird mentality here in the United States specifically to where we think that it's just a magic cure and we're going to take this pill and then everything's going to be okay. And while I support medication and I'm not against it, I think that it needs to be integrated with clinical treatment, like I said before. So basically, I was doing this, but I wasn't really in it because I think when you're seeking out this clinical mental health treatment, you have to be accountable and you have to be real and really give yourself a chance by not consuming other substances. And I was not doing this. So not only was I prescribed medication like benzodiazepines, I would also use and abuse other substances on the side. And this creates a discrepancy because your doctor is trying to figure out the best way to treat you and you're consuming things and maybe not being honest about it. And this is throwing everything off. So I really just wanted to offer this. If you're someone who is suffering from anxiety or depression, please give yourself a chance and stop consuming the recreational substances Even if you just tell yourself you're going to do it temporarily, this can really set you up for success because you will be at more of a baseline level to where your mental health care provider can treat you better. And so it will set you up for success in that way. So I really wanted to encourage that. So I want to say a little bit more about benzos and then I'll close. So basically, my opinion is that benzodiazepines should not be prescribed long term. I think that if you have a traumatic experience, maybe like a super terrible thing happens to someone in your family or to you, I understand the application short term. My honest opinion is that they shouldn't be really used then either because it can kind of hurt people's ability to accept and integrate trauma. So it's a weird paradox. Like I support someone doing that. I'm not going to judge them, but for me, that wouldn't be good. It wouldn't help. And a lot of people like to take benzodiazepines when someone passes away or they go to a funeral. They'll take these and it's part of culture for a lot of people. I also want to talk about how normalized abusing benzodiazepines is. People will take other people's prescription. Friends will, have a prescription and give it to another friend. And I just wanted to offer this perspective. Basically, if you're taking a medication that's not prescribed to you, you're abusing the medication. I'm sorry, but that's by definition, that's abusing the medication. Even if you're not taking way more, it's still abusing it. And so I would just really offer people this perspective is don't put yourself in that position to where you could almost invalidate the application of a medication because you abuse it before you get a prescription. So, and yes, I understand this is all red tape and stuff when it comes to prescriptions, but I would just say if you're gonna take a prescription medication, please do so with a prescription. And I'm not the authority on this by any means. I just really wanted to share that, and I hope that made sense. So yeah, basically in closing, I just want to say that after years of benzodiazepine abuse, it was one of the hardest things for me to quit. I was addicted to opiates as well. And for me, it was easier to accept that I wasn't going to take opiates ever again than it was accepting that I wasn't going to take benzodiazepines ever again. My first year clean, it was the one thing that I had cravings for consistently. But as soon as I started working on myself and addressing my motivation to use in the first place, all of that stuff shifted and I stopped being triggered to use. I'm going to touch on that briefly. So basically for me, I would have an overstimulating experience. This would create a anxiety response. And instead of entertaining the idea of taking a benzodiazepine, I would go the other way. I would talk about it. I would share openly. I would go into a solution like going into a meeting or hanging out and talking to someone who's in recovery or exercising or meditating or doing a breathing exercise or just distracting myself with a movie, with music. Really, any positive distraction is not going to hurt you. I do think it's important to actually integrate positive coping skills and disciplines, but as a start, man, there's nothing against just distracting yourself. So that's what I did. And I did this consistently with practice and repetition. I did it over and over again. And basically this resulted in my success. And now it's been over 7 years and I have not taken one benzodiazepine or any other drugs. So it's 100% possible to be someone who thinks that they're going to take benzos for the rest of their life, that takes them for years, and to get off them. So I'm sorry, but there's one more thing I have to share before I close out. If you're going to stop taking benzodiazepines, do not stop cold turkey. Do not do it on your own. Go to a doctor, go to a medical detox, go to an addictionologist, someone who practices addiction medicine, and they will help you to safely get off benzos. Because if you stop cold turkey and you do it on your own, you can have complications that result in seizures and even death. So please don't do that. I just want to offer for anyone out there that's suffering, please reach out to me. I will give any lived experience that I have that pertains to what you're experiencing. And I just want to encourage people to go to clinical professionals. I am not a clinical professional. I am just a peer recovery coach. So just keep that in mind. I am notably biased, but I'm willing to share my experience with anyone that finds it helpful. So feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate. Much love. Please be easy on yourselves.